when I go. You know what I like to do when I go live with you, James?
What do you like to do?
I like to look at some baseball cards. Don't you?
Definitely, always. I just finished watching Alan's cards. He had his top 30 cards. Man, what a treat. That was a treat. I love his collection.
Yeah, there are so many phenomenal collections on YouTube. I mean,
Right.
I can honestly say there's nobody, and I mean this, nobody that I watch that I'm not jealous of some card. I mean, in a good way, but you know what I mean. Where I like, oh, that's awesome. I wish I had that. Or some of them, it's like, wow, I wish I had that one instead of mine. The vintage sanctuary. I walked the floor with him, and he was asking to help. You were there. Look for some vintage cards for him. Man, that guy has an eye. Everything he brought back was spectacular. And that
Yeah.
61 Ernie Banks that he had, that thing just, the eye appeal on that thing is just insane.
It's amazing when other people can pick out cards and you're like, oh my God, I wish I could even have a card like that. Like you picked out a gorgeous one.
Yeah.
And you start to think to yourself, they just started getting back into it. And you're comparing it to how when you got back in, you didn't even care about centering as much or the
Yeah.
corners. And it's like they're like ahead of the game, it seems like in some ways.
Yeah, and that's what's changing now with the high values, and you have to have a 10 and everything, because that Ernie Banks, to me, I mean, it's just so sharp. It looks so beautiful. I think it's a 5. I
Hmm.
think.
Right.
But like, I can't even tell you what the grade is. But I just love like, it's a beautiful card. Like, who cares what the grade is? It looks spectacular.
Right. So I was just curious. Lately, you went on a rant, and then,
I wouldn't call it a rant there, James.
well, I mean, I don't know if it was like annoyance or there was validity to it, though. And even to the point where Mike Moynihan recently gave you a pop on his latest video, and I watched his, and a lot of people feel the same way you feel. And you just happen to voice it where others maybe keep those thoughts to themselves because maybe they don't want to be construed as an evil person or a troublemaker, but you were not being a troublemaker. You were just basically saying respect my hobby because I love this hobby and you can do what you want to do, but just respect it. Like that's basically what you were just saying. So I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth. What were your thoughts basically when you were doing the video?
Yeah. So, and there have always been, since cards were worth something, right? So you have the collectors, like you and me, and then you have the investors. Man, I'm hearing something banging around downstairs, and there's nobody here but me. So I'm either getting broken into, or my cat's causing a fuss. Sorry.
Maybe it's attacking someone breaking into your house.
Oh, my daughter's home. I wasn't expecting her home. Okay. All right. That makes me feel better. I don't have to get out my nunchucks to
And
protect
then
my cards.
we would have seen live footage of you guarding your place.
Yeah, that'd be terrible, getting robbed on camera live. Okay, so where was I? So we have the true collectors, right? Like the collectors, the ones that you want to own these cards, and you collect, and then you have the investment type, and we've always had that, right? And you need both, because without the investors, without the card shops, without the people who sell the cards, where are we going to get them? So you need both, but it's got to be like a healthy thing. And with 2020, uh, and I truly believe that these were guys. How this started really was guys selling to their friends for high amounts of money, making the news, and then turning around and selling it again on auction. And it seems like almost a Ponzi scheme, where these top cards are just selling over and over again, higher, higher, higher each time. Now that has pulled back now, but we have all these influencers that have come into the hobby, and they're better at making videos than us. They're talking about investing, and so they're talking to a different crowd than we are, right?
Right.
And they're making a big splash, and they've started to control. They've seized control of our hobby. Let's face it, because look where the prices are. That's pretty much all you need to know about that, to know that they've seized control. Now we have a lot of young collectors that are in this hobby now, and I am just worried about them getting burned, because if they're listening to some of these guys, and I was just pointing out like some things that just aren't good investments, like just right from the get-go. Like paying $10,000 for a 1988 Fleer box. Like you and I opened those back in the day. They are notoriously off center. Like you're not going to get a whole bunch of tens out of those cards. You're just not. If you open those packs, you know what they're like. And, he didn't, because that's the way it is. But if you're young, you don't know that. You're like, oh, 1988 box, let me buy it. They're all going to be 10. No, they're not. all cards that came out of a pack back then weren't 10s. Look at the 88 Donruss baseball. Those things, I mean, good luck, getting a bunch of 10s in a box of those. They're notoriously off center. So, it's more of the hobby. I think us collectors, and I said this, no matter what happens, we take it. We pay. We're the ones that pay, right? No matter what they do. If they want to take a year to grade our cards, we take it and we move on. If they want to grade trimmed cards or altered cards, we take it and we move on. If they want to double, triple, quadruple their prices for grading, we take it and we move on. If a box is selling, goes up to $1,000 a box for a box of tops, we pay it, we move on. But what I'm seeing now, and Dustin and Blake just did a video on this, and he showed all the YouTubers that are no longer making card content. And it's exactly what I've been fearing, is that you're pricing true collectors, the ones that drive this hobby, the ones that will be here when the hobby tanks again, if it tanks. You're driving them out of the hobby. You're pricing them out of the hobby. People are getting frustrated now with this, all these, the flipping and outrageous prices. And that's bad for the hobby, because you and I went through it in the early 90s. Everybody got greedy. They started overproducing stuff. They started raising prices. Everybody was hoarding it. And then what happened? It took 30 years to come back. 30 years. Right? And if it crashes this time, it will be 10 times as bad as that. People weren't spending hundreds of thousands and millions on cards back then.
And I thought it might crash when the pandemic hit, but all it did was boom even more, which was shocking. But then
it was strange, right? It was counterintuitive.
It was strange. I thought I was going to be left holding like thousands of dollars worth of cards that be worth hundreds. And I was like, oh, well, like I knew I was buying cardboard with paint on it, like literally. So I knew it didn't have any real value to it, but it went up. And it went up at a almost 10x rate, it seemed like. And then it's like it basically corrected somewhat, but then like it seemed like modern took a bath. Like if you were holding a lot of the high-end modern stuff that went almost half value, man, I don't know how you recovered from that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's half from ridiculous figures. Tatis Jr. sold for $242,000. Clay Thompson, 42,000. I mean, you could get a high-end Babe Ruth for 30 or 40, and these guys are selling for as much or more. And well, without getting into that debate, I mean, even though it came down, they're still way up.
Right.
So, if it crashes this time, man, it would be bad because of the huge amounts of money being spent on it.
But it doesn't seem like it's going to crash at all, because it seems like with vintage especially, those are showing to be extra strong. And in some cases, like with, and I'm going back to Mike's video because I just saw it about a few hours ago, where he said he couldn't win any bids on his 70 vintage cards. And none of them were like really expensive cards, but he still couldn't win them. They were like going for a lot more than they should have. So when you think of things like that, if the low-hanging fruit is you can't even attain that for what you're accustomed to. Me, like for example, with me, my 52 set I'm working on, all the commons I try to get anywhere from $5 to $8, given the, if it's creased or if it's sharp looking. $12 maybe if it looks like it'll be like a 7 or something, but I wouldn't spend more than like on average $6 to $10. Now it seems like they're going for $10 to $12 on the low end. And I'm like, whoa, like this is not what I was expecting to spend for a common card. But they're all,
Well, you know what? You hit on something important. I was just engaged in a conversation on one of my videos with somebody about this, and I did a video where I say I don't set collect anymore. I've been working on sets from the early 1900s, through the 80s, and I have some complete sets, and I have a lot of near complete sets, and I stopped even worrying about that because of the price of commons. It's like I'm going to end up with all these players I don't know, and some of the high number series are really expensive, and they're a guy that played 2 games in Major League Baseball, and it's just not worth it to spend that kind of money when and give up being able to buy a really nice card, because
right.
if you go and complete those with all those commons, you're going to spend a fortune. I mean, you hit it. And then to your comment about these prices, I mean, so it's just insane. Now, this doesn't mean that it's wrong, and it doesn't mean that it's bad. It's actually, I think it's good in some ways, is that these cards that are now, you put them in a PSA 9 or 10 and they're going for good money. These were considered junk cards in the old days. And I don't consider any cards junk. And I don't mean junk in that, you don't want to collect them. I mean junk in that you couldn't give them away. And
Right.
now they're selling for $120, $130, and you literally couldn't, get somebody to pay you $10 for them 3 years ago.
Right.
So yes, all these common ones. But what you and I and people more our age, I think I'm older than you. I know I'm older than you, but I think what we have to realize is those are old, obscure cards to the new generation. The cards we thought were so mundane. It's just like our father's generation. They weren't worth anything, and their moms threw them away. And
Mhm.
then when the boom came, everybody was regretful. And I think our age group is going through that kind of regret where they were such junk for so long, nobody even wanted them, and now you can sell them for 120 each. you know, we're
Right.
kind of going through what our father's generation went through a little bit.
Right. So let me ask you a question. So I guess people are investing overall. Some people like to flip, but then they
Yeah.
notice that they're buying stuff that aren't worth as much in the future as they thought. Maybe when they get their graded package back, it's like, oh my God, I got all these cards I thought were going to be worth so much, and they're not worth anything, not even the price I graded them for. So they're going to the more solid cards, which we deem are like pre-war and vintage, and the very rare scarce stuff like the food issue cards that you love and Rick loves. Like those are like really scarce. Like good luck finding good copies of those. Like, do you think people are starting to wake up and notice where maybe it's wiser to put your money into?
In the vintage,
I guess, yeah, vintage or scarce food issue cards or really
well,
rare stuff.
of course, that's where my love lies and where most of my money lies, as far as the cards I bought. I fear, to be honest with you, I'm gonna be totally honest. I fear we're hitting a peak right now. I
Mm.
feel the vintage collector is at the age where they have the money. They're either close to retirement or retired. And these guys can go out there and, like that auction last night, buy that stuff. Because the reason that I say that is if you look at the top auctions. Now, I watch the financial news every day because I'm a stock investor. So every morning, that's my routine with my coffee. And more over the last few years, they have cards on there a lot, and they feature the top auctions, and they have the auction house presidents on there talking about it. And of course, if you go onto any magazine, they'll give you the auction listings, and you can see them on YouTube channels as well. What are the top selling cards? They're LeBrons. There's 5 LeBrons on the top of every list. Tom Brady, and Tatis selling for 242. Um, those kinds of players, and they're above Babe Ruth's. And aside from like the T206 Wagner and the 52 Mantle, You don't see a lot of vintage on those lists at the top. They're mostly newer cards.
Right.
And you couple that with the younger generation that doesn't know the history of the game. They don't know a lot of these players. I mean, there are kids that don't know who Mickey Mantle is. And I'm
Right.
not saying that facetiously, but that's just the way it is,
Right.
right? And not everybody's interested in the old beat up stuff. And back to my video and the posts that I've seen, people are saying they wouldn't want to own, where is it? They wouldn't want to own this card because it's ugly and old and beat up and it's a 2.5. And why would they want to own this when they can have an 8 or 9 or 10 in a
Right.
leader's card? Think
Right.
about that. That's a major shift. That's a major shift. And that is why I get so myself. Now, I don't tell other people what to do. I'm just saying for myself, I get so fired up that grading has ruined the hobby. When you would rather have, in my opinion, a far, lesser of a card in a 9 that there's 100,000 of, than one of the all-time great cards in a 2.5 of one of the greatest players to ever play. You know what I mean?
And the thing, like with the card that you have for 2.5, that card still has tremendous eye appeal, which makes me think it's a gorgeous card, no matter the grade.
James, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's like that Ernie Banks I was talking about earlier that Vintage Sanctuary has. That card is absolutely gorgeous, and eye appeal is in the eye of the beholder. And I don't care what PSA slabs on it. That card is gorgeous. This card, there's nothing wrong with it. And they
Right.
won't even look at the card. They don't look at the card itself. They only look at that grade. And
Right.
that's why I said, are we collecting slabs or cards these days? Because so if you are one of those collectors and you only want 8s and aboves or 9s and 10s, you can't collect this stuff. I showed this on my video I just uploaded today. And it's a rare Rogers Hornsby. The PSA is graded 6. The highest graded one that they graded was a 1. And it's probably, the worst looking example because these cutouts, all the others are authentic. The highest graded example was a 1. So that means that even though Rogers Hornsby is one of the greatest players, even though this is one of the rarest sets in the hobby, there are a lot of people apparently that wouldn't even want it because it's old and it's an authentic.
No, I love those cards.
And I
I've
mean,
always
this thing's
appreciated it.
in great
Um,
shape.
yeah, I've always appreciated it because you just don't see them often. Like we were going back to saying Tatis, like it almost seemed like everyone had a Tatis rookie card. So what's the big whoop? Like, and okay,
Yeah,
maybe someone has it in a 9 or an 8, as opposed to someone having it in a 10. They're still all beautiful. Like it's just the difference is what you spend on it.
but that's the thing. That the new hobby, it doesn't matter if it's beautiful, because these guys can't tell the difference between. They pull a pack, they pull cards out. They have 12 Tatis. They can't tell the difference between 8s and 9s and 10s. If they did, there would be no 8s or 9s because you wouldn't pay to get them graded because those aren't the ones that bring the big money. So
Right.
you could prove that they can't tell the difference because they wouldn't even send them in. And when they get an 8 or a 9, they crack it and send it back. It's all about getting that number on a slab. And the difference between a 9 and 10 can only be seen under a loop. So if you are a card collector, you can't tell the difference. So the only reason you would, care about a 9 over a 10 is because, number one, this is something else, this is what I didn't like about grading from day one is if you're going to grade it on a scale of 1 to 10, anything less than a 10 sucks. Who
Right.
wants something less than the top grade,
And the
right?
funny thing is, you could have a 10 that's off-centered. Is it really a 10 at that point?
Well, you know what? I don't do a lot of grading, and I'm a bit of a centering junkie. So all the cards that I sent in that got 10s, they were well centered. So today I saw an off-centered 10, and I posted it. And I didn't know that a 10 could be off-center. I honestly didn't know that. B. Roth made a comment, and I'm like, you're kidding me. Well, then we should have a 10.5 grade because a 10 should be perfect. A 10
Well,
should be perfect. It shouldn't be off-center because now a 10 is subjective.
right. That's what
But
separates the pristine black label from a PSA 10, because there are, you know, like off-center 10s, but a pristine is like, there's no way.
Well, who determines this stuff? I mean, I'm not against like an off center being a 10 because it came out of the pack that way. I'm not against that at all. But like, who determines this? Because you see gorgeous cards that you don't get anywhere near a 10. And I mean, you can't see anything with the naked eye. They look so sharp. And you see these guys that do the reveals, right? All of us at times have sent in for grading. You get reveals, and sometimes you're shocked by the grade, right?
Yeah, Timeless Cardboard put up a comment, which I find interesting. Pre-war cards with high grades look wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Awesome looking cards for 100-year-old
I
cards.
couldn't agree more. I have a card, and I say it all the time, from the Black Swamp Find. It looks fake. You know, it was never distributed.
It looks
And
like
that
a reprint.
yeah, it does. And it was never distributed. It sat in an attic for 70 years or whatever. And to me, like, part of the joy of collecting, and I collect stamp backs, which are immediately going to get a 1.5, right? Because they have a stamp on the back.
Mhm.
And you know, you try to reunite them from the kid that collected them as a kid, and that's a whole other realm of the hobby. But you know, the grading goes out the window. You might as well not even send them in. You know, the highest grade you're going to get is a 1.5 on it.
And you know, going back to the 52 set I'm collecting, when I get the Andy Pafkow, which I haven't bought it yet, but when I buy that one card, I want it to be in a 1.
Yeah.
I want it to look presentable for a 1, but I want it to look like the beater that it's supposed to be. Because
you told me that. When you told me that, I'm like, that's an amazing idea. I want to do that too now.
But that's, I mean, the others could look
that's
like
the history of the card, though.
Exactly.
That's why that card used to be so expensive, because it's number one. It was around the rubber band, and that's what makes that card, you know, what it is.
Exactly.
Like if I have a museum,
even better.
Yeah, if I have a museum, I want that Pavco like in beat up shape, the way it was, to show the history of that's the way it was. And to me, like a card that hasn't been circulated almost isn't a real card. That's the beautiful thing about collecting vintage that's different from collecting modern. And modern, you pull the card out of your pack. When you buy vintage, you're buying a card that was in circulation, and some kids enjoyed that. Maybe multiple kids, they traded it, whatever. And I don't know, there's just something for me about a card having been in circulation.
Right. Well, one other thing when it comes to vintage as opposed to modern that I am upset about as a collector is that I can own a base card of ex rookie card of an ex player, and sometimes it's like, nah, it's not an autograph, it's not a parallel, it's not an atomic or a refractor, and it's like, nah,
that's
like, never.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, James. If you grew up today, right? You're a 12-year-old today, and you're pulling the shiny stuff and the refractors and the patches and the autographs. I mean, look at those cards, and you put them next to old people you don't know. These old cardboard. This is why I think that the vintage is peaking. I'm not so sure the younger generation is as much. That's why when I saw Staven Sports Cards at the National, you know, I wanna support a guy like that. A 23-year-old who's into vintage. I'd tell him everything I know.
Yeah.
You know, and Junior Baseball Fanatic 12, you know, I was grilling him at that show in Tampa, and you know, about trivia and stuff like that. And you know, he appreciates it. And when he did that one video on Tommy Leach, I was like a proud father watching that video. I really was.
Look at
because how many 12-year-olds know Tommy Leach?
Look at Caesar. He likes his cards like his roommates circulated. Dude, I sent you an invite, Caesar. What happened, man?
Pepino, get on here.
Right?
Save me. You have to save me from myself. I'm going to say something stupid.
Well, the one thing about like vintage that I'm happy it's getting its due is that I always felt like it wasn't as valued as it should have been. But now it's getting harder for me to pick some examples up because I'm almost getting priced out of what I think they should be going for. And that's starting to get frustrating.
Well, here for me, this is how I feel about the boom and the big raise in prices. It's like, if I know this is how it's going to be, then I will adjust, suck it up, and I'll pay more than I used to. No problem. If that's what I have to do. But for me, my problem, what I worry about is, are the prices going to stay here? So if I do pay up and pay more than I used to, am I going to regret that in 2 years when it's worth half of that price? Those are the kinds of things that I think us collectors struggle with,
Right.
because even if like all my cards go up, so what? I'm not selling them. It doesn't help me. It'll help people when I'm dead.
Right.
So it's not helping me. It just costs me more to buy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when these card prices go up, they say, "Well, yeah, it benefits you." No, it doesn't. I'll be dead when it benefits me. So I really, it doesn't benefit me. I have to pay more, and
Right.
my insurance goes up because now I have to insure them for more. Like, it costs me money at every turn when my cards go up in value as a collector.
Do you ever give up on a specific card that you were hunting for because you just
I've given up on,
out
yes, at least 20. At
20?
least 20 that I could have bought before COVID that I can't buy now. Or, I mean, hey, let's face it, I could buy a lot of cards, but I mean, I'm not willing to spend that much for me, as much as I love cards, because I don't know if they'll be worth that in 5 years. And, I want to retire, and I don't want to have all my money in cards.
Right.
So I don't spend a lot of money at a time on cards. I really don't. And I think if you saw my collection, you would think that I paid 2 or 3 times what I've paid for it. But
Right.
of course, as you know, I got a lot of it when I was young. I got a lot of it in the early 2000s too. I got a lot of it in the 80s, the early 90s, and the early 2000s. And then when I got back in 2014, the card prices were the same or cheaper than in the early 2000s. And I was buying stuff up like crazy. I mean, like, just crazy. Like, you were paying nothing for a 53 Bowman Mantle or a 54 Bowman Maze or a 53 Bowman Maze, like Tops Maze, I mean. Just paying nothing. I couldn't believe that I could get these cards for these prices. And then
Yeah.
the boom I mean, when I first started buying Mike Trouts, I was buying them in lots for like two for $30. In a Beckett 9.5, like his Tops and Bowman and the Chrome rookies.
Right.
And I remember I only wanted one, but there was a lot of two, and they were on there for like $35. So I bought two of them, and I sold one immediately because my plan was, well, I'll get it almost free. I'll buy the two and I'll sell one once I get them. And it's just so funny because I was a big Mike Trout fan. As a baseball fan, I just thought he was the best in the league from like early on when I saw him play. And
Right.
so I was buying all these cards on Facebook and eBay for nothing. I mean, they were you could get lots for $10 of his cards, like nothing. That update, I remember I finally sucked it up and I paid $50 for one, which I thought was ridiculous based on what those cards were going for at the time. That particular one was, more. And for years they did nothing. And I would like sell them off because I had doubles and everything. And man, I wish I kept them because they went through the freaking roof.
You could have
But
bought so many nice pre-war cards
but
selling
when
those.
you've lived through that era where you can't give a Mike Trout away, right? So that could happen again. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm worried about.
Well, that might happen with Tatis now.
That's Sonella Margarine, Babe Ruth. I had two. I bought two. They were two different types. I got the complete set. One was in a PSA awful holder where it was just, loose in there. And the other one had a nice insert where it was nice and tight. And I hated the way that PSA looked. And and whether it was the more rare type, I didn't care. Man, I could not give that card away. Couldn't give it away. They were selling for $100 in a PSA 6. And now threes are going for like $3,000.
The other thing that's making it hard for me to buy vintage is because I like buying my vintage raw, because I could buy it 30 cents on the dollar raw. And I can make up for my own mind what I feel the value of that card should be based on the appearance, whether it's got a crease, whether it's got rounded corners, whether it's centered. But I can judge for myself and gauge if that card is undervalued, overvalued from what someone's asking for. But once it's graded, now you're just comparing what other graded cards of that went for, and
Right.
based on the appearance of the card, if it's should be a little below, a tick higher. But other than that, you know what the value is. But for a raw card, it's like, if I could find one for $5 that looks like it'll grade a 6 and is worth $100 as a 6, I'd rather pay $5 for a raw one and take the chance that it might be trimmed. And most of the time, 98% of the time, I bought raw cards that haven't been messed with. And
yeah, well, I have a higher percentage than that. I've been very, very good with that.
yeah,
I
so
mean, I haven't gotten
I think
burned at all.
I think people get worried about buying raw cards because of that, but I'm like, keep them coming. Like, I will buy them up all day long.
Me too. But here's the problem when you want to sell raw cards is, like, you know, in the modern hobby, with the guys that are selling or want to sell or just are afraid to buy raw, they are of the opinion that they're going to pay you a PSA 1 or a PSA 1.5 price if it's raw, no matter what it looks like. Right? I've heard this is what guys will do. This is all they're willing to pay for a raw card, no matter what it looks like, because they assume that there's something wrong with it. And that's the first point I wanted to make. And that's a problem if you're trying to sell raw cards. The second point I wanted to make is something that Pepino Man said, and it really stuck with me. And it is so true. And I think only us vintage collectors can truly appreciate this statement. But no two vintage cards are the same. You know, when you pull the new cards out of the pack, they all look identical, right? Every vintage card has some nuance, a fisheye, a little off center here, a little off center this way. They're just no two of them look identical.
Right.
And if you get, you go buy 10 PSA 7s, they're not going to look the same.
They're not.
Unlike today's cards. And I guarantee you give your average person a 9 and a 10 and cover up the grade, and have them look at it under light and with glasses, magnifying glass. They're not going to be able to tell them apart. You know that. No. But they'll pay a hell of a lot more for that one, that 10 up here.
Right. And what you could do with vintage is also, it could speak to how you collect. Like, you could tell in someone's collection, their vintage cards, what they look for in eye appeal. You could tell what they. Well,
that's the other thing. That's the other thing. How can a secondary company or a third party company tell you what looks good to you? How can they tell? You know, so somebody had made the comment, and I might get this a little wrong because I don't know anything about it, but he was comparing it to stamps. And I guess with stamps, like they give you some parameters, some general parameters, authentication, this and that, but they don't like assign a numeric grade. They make an assessment of that stamp, and then it's up to you based on the eye appeal and everything, which one you want, or, you know, what you want to pay for it. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that cards should be more like that. The numerical grade thing, I don't personally like. I don't. Mm-hmm. I've often thought about starting a grading company where you're just authenticating the card and labeling it, because I talk to so many collectors that only get it graded because they want it slabbed. They want the label. They don't care about the grade. They're buying the card, not the grade. And, you know, if they're not all 10s, what do I need, a 2 on here, or a 4 or a 5 or a 6? Like, I can make my own determination how I like this card, but maybe I do want it slabbed and to know that it's authenticated and not messed with. But I don't want a number on the slab. And I think there is a place in our hobby for that. I know I am one of those people that would use it. If you want to see me turn into a super card grader, you know, sending in cards by the tons, start that service, and I will use it.
Well, I was just asked the question, what's the most I would pay for raw off on eBay? I've actually paid 4 figures for a raw card on eBay. And that was for my Roberto Clemente rookie card. But that thing came back a 5 when I got it graded. And it almost was worth triple what I paid for it raw. But that was a case where at the time, eBay would give you 30 days to ask for money back. So I had enough time to send it off, get a grade and make sure it's not trimmed or something. And that's it. We did fine with the deal. But now I probably wouldn't take that same risk. Maybe $200 is the most I would pay for something raw, because you have to be of the belief you're willing to lose that money by taking that risk. And if you're not willing to lose that money, then don't pay that much. And it's almost like when someone borrows money from you, only lend out what you could afford to lose. Don't lend people money that's gonna, you're gonna miss. So that's how I treat buying raw on eBay, is what's gonna hurt me if I paid so much for a raw card and it comes back trim or altered. How about you?
Yeah.
What would
Well, for me, it depends on the dealer.
okay.
Like if you buy from Dean's Cards, and they get a knock sometimes because they're a little bit more expensive than most, but they grade their cards themselves, and I would trust their grading better than the $13 an hour guys they pull off the street at PSA. To be honest with you, and when you get a card, they stamp it on the back, and they tell you what grade they think it is and everything. And like, for instance, I bought a 59 raw Clemente from them several years ago before the boom. And I had one, but I stumbled on this one, and it was so sharp and so centered. So, I bought the raw one, and I had a 5. And when I got it, I mean, it just looks amazing, but it graded a 6. And they had it listed as, like, I think it was excellent to mint or just excellent. And their grading I have found to be on point. And so you might pay a little bit more, but sometimes it's worth the, what's the word I'm looking for? The safety, I guess, of knowing that you're buying from somebody reputable, somebody that knows they're going to know if this card is trimmed or not. Whereas if you're buying it from an antique dealer and they only have 1 or 2 cards listed and on eBay, they don't know cards. That's one of the first things I look at is what else are they selling? Are they a card expert, card seller, or are they selling a bunch of antiques and happen to have this card? Because they're not going to know. Those people will get duped. It's not that they're trying to rip you off. They don't know. They got duped.
Right.
So, 707 Sports Cards I like to buy from. I trust them. David's Vintage, really good dealer. There's a lot of them.
Greg Moore is another one.
Greg Morris.
But Greg Morris, you can't get him for cheap.
No. But you're paying. Peace of mind is the term I was looking for. You might pay up a little bit, but it gives you a little peace of mind to know that you're dealing with a reputable dealer. And if anything goes wrong, I mean, if that card comes back fake or something, they're going to give you your money back.
Right.
As opposed to just buying from.
They cross-check them, right?
Yeah. Well, nowadays, eBay is authenticating them for you. So you don't really have that problem if you're going to spend $1,000 on a card. eBay is sending it for you.
The slab, though.
Well, I find it ridiculous with the slab, but I don't find it ridiculous with raw cards. Right. I mean, I still think it should be a choice. If I'm buying from some of those sellers, I trust them. And the thing about when they authenticate a raw card, my problem, and I don't know because I haven't encountered it, but it just comes back as authentic. So could it be trimmed? If it's trimmed, are they going to send it to you and say it's authentic? If it's colored in, are they going to? So it doesn't really tell you anything. They're just telling you it's authentic. And as I pointed out in my video, 99% of cards have never been faked. The bigger problem is trimming and coloring. Only the big cards are faked. Most cards have never been faked. So, and most cards aren't worth faking. It's not worth your time, right? Like if you're going to fake something, it's going to be a Michael Jordan rookie or something that's worth your time.
Yeah, you're not going to find a lot of the cards that you're buying up, American Caramel or Philadelphia Caramel or even rarer cards, just because people don't even think, they don't know they exist. Only true collectors like what we're into, we know they exist, but we don't expect them to come up often anyway.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, I mean, you're rarely going to find those ungraded.
Right. Have you ever bought like really expensive cards raw, like what I said with the Roberto Clemente rookie?
Buds were dying. I'm sorry, I had to switch. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I bought some cards off of a friend of my dad once. I sold most of them, but I bought a few. And And it sucks when you do that because I paid top dollar for everything because I was like, I erred on the high side because I didn't want to, anybody to think that I wasn't paying fair price. So I would go on eBay and whatever the high price was, I paid them. But I sold the majority, but but that's the only guy. That's the only guy. But I knew they were in his childhood collection. He had binders of 1950s cards. Most of them were not in good condition. Most of his Hank Aaron rookie, I sold it. I remember I sold it at the time for him for $900. It looked like somebody put it in their back pocket and went for a 12-hour bicycle ride, several weeks in a row. I mean, it was really beat. It presented well though for being that beat. Like you could still see the card, but it was wrinkled. Like every inch of it was wrinkled. And he had a lot of cards that were in that condition. He had a few of them were like 4s, 5s, but I don't think it was anything higher than that. Dom, maybe. Go ahead.
No, I was saying Dom brings up a interesting point of how SGC is finally being a little more transparent with their authentic grades, which is finally, right?
Hey, amen. I mean, what kind of customer service is it to send you back an A and you have no clue? It's always been so frustrating. And I say that especially about like cutout cards, because PSA determines what size they think that thing should be, right? I don't know who they are to determine that, but that's how they do it. And so when it comes back, if it doesn't meet that minimum size, it comes back an A. Well, we don't know if it's colored, if it's just didn't meet the minimum size. We don't, it can't be trimmed because it's a cutout card to begin with, right? But we don't know why it's getting that A. Is it just minimum size? I mean, how hard is it to tell you on your receipt? That's just common courtesy.
I find it weird that the minimum size requirement, even though you got it out the pack that way, won't allow you to get a grade. It's
well, that bothers me too, James, because printing wasn't precise back then.
Right.
It just wasn't precise. And if it came out of a pack that way and it just doesn't meet the size you think it should be, well, that shouldn't be an A, because Topps made it that way. That's how God made it. God made it that way.
Orlando, I know, bought a 52 mantle and it graded an A because of the minimum size requirement.
But it wasn't trimmed.
It wasn't trimmed, and it was a stupendous.
But when it just says A, right, James, but when it just says A and I'm the buyer, how do I know that? How do I know that if PSA didn't put it on the label?
Authentic going rate. That's it.
I mean, yeah, I if I'm paying $100,000 for a card, am I going to take Orlando's word for it? I mean, I might, because I know he's reputable. You know what I'm saying? Am I going to take somebody's word for it? No, PSA should put it on the label if that's the case, because that's a big difference. Am I going to buy? It just doesn't meet minimum size from Topps. I would buy that, but I'm not. I don't want to buy it if it's trimmed. Right. That's just my personal preference. But if it just came out of the pack a little short, I would buy that all day long.
Right, and that's another thing with vintage is sometimes you get those issues like what you said is it's came out like that from the factory with quality control, but you even get that now with modern, which is like a head scratcher to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, things happen. I talk about the O-Pee-Chees, especially the 1973 O-Pee-Chee baseball. Man, they're all rough cut, and that's what I love about that set. Like, I seek out the rough cut, but there's like a corner up here and this and that. And I do have to give props to PSA on this one, because they will give you a 10 or a 9 on a rough cut. And I congratulate them on that, because that's how they came. That's how they came. I think they cut them with a wire or something.
Right. Look at Bart. He's saying his last submission, PSA didn't even grade the factory miscuts, and they returned at no cost. Wow. PSA
are you serious? See, I mean, but why? I mean, if they know it's a factory miscut, why not put that on the label?
That is crazy. You can't even get an MC now on it. It's
wow.
PSA has gotten so strict.
Well, this is part of my problem, where I say that we allow them to control everything in our hobby, the pricing, what our cards are worth. I mean, as long as we empower them, they can do what we want, and we just have to take it.
Yeah, and you know, they're the juggernaut in the business. SGC is almost at their level, not quite yet. BBG has gone down a little bit, or BGS, and it's like everyone gives PSA the power, and everyone sees fake cards sometimes slabbed by them, and they're still the powerhouse, the juggernaut. They see cards that PWCC, you know, altered, and they're still the juggernaut. That's the part that I don't understand.
Well, it's even getting scarier, James. If you watched, I pointed out on my video, if you watch breakout cards go over those Mickey Mantle top certified autographs and stuff like that, that starts to get real scary.
Man,
And Nate, when he pointed out, and all the Barry Bonds experts, that they graded that Barry Bond or authenticated that autograph, that's getting real scary because those cards could go for big money.
right, and that's where a lot of
Not
people,
not that the other ones they graded didn't go for big money, but
right,
you know what I'm saying.
and that's where people need to do their homework and make sure they know what they're buying, especially when they're investing a lot of money into a specific card. Is they need to, I do my research. Like even when I bought some of my more expensive cards, I research what a going rate for a specific looking card should be at. And I tell myself, is that my price point or am I trying to get it lower? I research. It takes me sometimes a whole year to finally pick up a card. And people don't realize that I do a lot of diligence on a card sometimes, even a $30 card. Sometimes I tell myself, I know I could get a nice looking 7 for $30. So I'll just wait when one finally comes up. And it might take a whole year, but when it does, I feel like I want to do cartwheels.
Yeah, but I started doing that in 2020. It didn't work out so well because you're looking for that $30 card. The next week it's 40. The next week it's 50.
Yeah, some of them, like my Sandy Koufax, that one, it came down a little bit, thank the Lord, but it's not at a point yet that I'm comfortable buying that card yet. So that one's gonna be almost 2 years in the making of me still looking for that card.
Yeah.
So are there any cards now that you're like looking for that maybe you're hoping will come down, or they're just no matter what they keep going up?
Well, like the cards that I've been priced out of that I could have easily bought if I wanted them, there were several, man. Like the W502 Lou Gehrig, or like one of the ice cream issues. The 33 DeLong Lou Gehrig. Like that thing's just gone like quadrupled, more than quadrupled in price. And for years, it stayed around the same. It wasn't cheap, but I mean, I could have bought it easily. And the 38 DiMaggio, Gaudi
Mm.
DiMaggio, I'm priced out of that now. I'm not somebody who pays $5,000-$7,000 every week for a card. It's just not me.
I gave up
Um,
on the heads up. I was gonna try to collect the set, only the ones with the cartoons on it, and the DiMaggio was the one that made me give up. Everyone else I thought was still attainable, but that DiMaggio, there was one that was a PSA 4, grade 4, 2400, I remember. And I passed on it because at the time, I think, my priorities were on other things. And I was like, no, I can't throw 2400 on a card right now. And that was the last one that passed me by. And after that, they were all like $4,000, $5,000. And I'm like, holy crap.
I want to tell you something. Card collecting is not as much fun when you have to pay, $1,000 to get a really nice card or something. It's just not.
No,
I'm fortunate. I got all these cards for so much less than that. And here's the thing: I buy a lot of obscure stuff and rare stuff, and it's awesome. And it's a good lesson to learn is that just because something's rare, even if it's of a rare, one of the greatest players, even if it's one of the greatest players, it doesn't necessarily mean that it sells for a lot. Because I buy this obscure stuff that people don't know, and so they're not looking for it. It's not in their watch lists, and they're not bidding on it. And people will sit on them, and nobody's buying it because they don't know what it is, and then they'll finally lower the price, and then I'll hit buy it now. And
so
so most of these rare cards I get for a tiny fraction of what most people will pay for an Acuna or a Tatis, or a fraction, a tiny fraction.
So, for example, that Rogers Hornsby that you picked up, you said there were what, only 6 graded, and that was the highest grade of one.
Yeah.
So you had that on your watch list, or what, or it just popped up and you're like, whoa, this rarely ever comes up. Like, how'd you come
You know,
upon that one?
you know what? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I was browsing, or I was probably browsing. I mean, all of us, and the worst is Rick, Vintage Oddball Cards. All of us browse auctions a lot. Not as much as him, as you know, James. He does it 24/7, always sending us stuff. I'm like, stop it, Rick, because then it costs me money every time he sends me one of those things.
Rick is
No,
great.
I mean, I just browse a lot. Like, if you want to find these cards, depending on what you collect, if you collect more obscure stuff or whatever, I mean, there's so many card issues I collect. 33 DeLong, 33 Tattoo Orbit, the 50 Drakes, the Red Heart, the Dandy. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. 1962 Pittsburgh exhibits. Like, I have all these searches saved. And once in a while, I want to relax. I'll lay back on the couch and I'll just start hitting my searches and see what pops up. And then what happens is you're looking at something and they're giving you suggestions below, right? And then you go down that rabbit hole and you end up 5 screens down
Right.
and try to get back. And you just stumble on stuff, because at this point in my collecting life, I'm more of an opportunist. I used to have these want lists, right? Like, at first it was a card I wanted. Then it was like, okay, well, I want these Hall of Fame players. These are the players that aren't represented in my collection. I remember I made a big list of players I didn't have. And once you get those, and once you get some of your dream cards, and now I'm more of an opportunist. Like, I find that rare gem, and for the right price, and sometimes I can't hit buy it now fast enough. I hurry up. I have to stop myself because I have to make sure I'm seeing it correctly, right?
Right.
Like, am I missing something? Is this really what this is? Is it like in a slab, right?
Right. Right.
Sometimes, like, I stumbled across this Nolan Ryan 1971 in a PSA 10, and I'm like, it was selling for like $339, and I'm like, what the heck is this? I'm like, man, I'm buying this thing, right? And I'm looking at it, and then I finally looked at the label, and it was some sort of Topps reprint. Even reprints are selling for $339 in a 10. That's how crazy and ludicrous sometimes this grading stuff has gotten. But yeah, but I you couldn't tell, and those are the kind of things that dupe new collectors, newbie that don't know to look for that they don't know that there are 12 reprinted cards of every there are probably 30 reprinted cards of every card Topps ever made. They insert them in every set nowadays. And even though it's fun to get those, and it's good for kids to get them and learn about them, it's man, it's so confusing. How many modern players are on a 1972 Topps design card? I mean, they've used that as an insert over the years, in so many different products. And you get one, you have no idea what it's from. You know what I mean?
Right. And
And it gets confusing.
yeah, I have to do my diligence and read everything carefully, because well, I mention a 52 a lot because that's pretty much everything I've been buying lately. Every now and then, like you, if something comes up like an opportunist, I'm gonna pounce on it. But there, like what you said, I'm gonna say the same thing. Like, there's a lot of cards that I wanted that I've been fortunate enough to buy, and the others that have probably ballooned to a price that I'm like, no, I can't do that. That's it. I stopped looking for it. I take it off my watch list because it's already at a point where it's like ridiculous to come upon it. And then, so with the 52 per se, there's reprints all over the place. And I got to make sure I read it carefully because I don't want to buy one for like $5. I'm like, oh my God, that looks a gorgeous one. Let me buy that one real quick. And it's reprint somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed emotions on even grading reprints. I mean, by their very definition, they're not a real card, but then other people say, well, I'm never going to have the real one, and a reprint's nice to have. And that's all well and fine, but I find it a little confusing with the grading companies. And as we go on, and there's more and more and more and more, I think new collectors get very confused by all of it. myself. I want to show you. I got a lucky find here. So one of my dream cards was the Maple Crispet, Walter Johnson, and it was one of the cards. I was looking for at the National and everything. And as you know, you couldn't pay PayPal or anything at the National, and I ran out of cash like the first hour or something. So um, I couldn't really buy anything. So when I got home, I had all this cash in my PayPal that I had intended. So I spent the next morning shopping, and I found a really nice Crispet Walter Johnson. And I wanted this card ever since I first saw it in Sports Collectors in the standard catalog of baseball cards. So I find this nice example at a good price, and I buy it, and that's what it looks like. And this is a more obscure set. I don't want to call it rare, but it's scarce. We'll put it that way. Well, it turns out that this one's super rare because so I get it, and I never really paid much attention.
Okay.
But these have a specific back with a little baseball bat and a glove and a ball, because you could, if you completed the 30 card set, you could send them in for a baseball or a glove. And the Casey Stengel short printed in here. They only made a few, so they didn't have to give away any baseballs or bats. But here's the thing: when I got mine, it's blank back. So now I'm freaking out. I'm like, is this fake? Is this a different card issue? Did PSA mislabel this? These have a back, but I never noticed it when I was buying it. I don't know why. I'm so used. I buy so many blank backs. I just wasn't thinking. So I immediately reach out to Dave, Blue Jacket 66. I'm like, what do you know about Maple Crispet, right? Because now I don't know if it's rare or if I got duped or what it is. They mislabeled it. And so he posted on Net54, that website, and all these guys knew everything about cards. And the one guy who used to collect this set, very knowledgeable, said he's only ever seen one blank back. Wow. And then somebody else came back, and they had like 3 blank backs, right? So it turns out, I think this might be the only Walter Johnson blank back in existence. It's possible. I don't know. And here's one of the problems, and this is also the problems that I have with grading companies, is a blank back obviously exists, but PS doesn't recognize it. And I mean, if you're a card expert, right, you're going to authenticate and grade cards, you should have this separated. They do it on a lot of sets. I don't know why they don't do it on this set, because they've graded some, right? They graded this one.
They don't know enough, it seems like. Or
well, I've run into that a lot. I bought a Cuban card of Ray Dandridge, and there's 2 years. I think it was 46 to 45 to 46, and then 46 to 47. Well, the 46 to 47 is way more rare than the 45 to 46. I think those are the years. The second year that they made them is way more rare. And SGC labeled it the first year. And I mean, it's clearly not that year. So I have a card now that is mislabeled, and I have to pay money if I want to get them to put the correct label on it. Now, they would probably do it if I reached out to them and say, you made an error here. But, that makes a big difference when you're selling a card.
Of course. And,
and if you don't know the difference, because that's an obscure issue. If I didn't do super research on that, I don't think I'd know. And then it would sell for, a lot less because it's way more common than the other one.
No, well, for people that know about pre-war and cards like those strip cards or, free giveaway, collect this many, they know that they were used as advertisements. So they left them blank on purpose. So whoever picks up that card, they could put the advertisement on the back. So they were specifically blank for a reason. But that you learned which sets did that, what were the advertisements, and sometimes there were some that just made it out for whatever reason without an advertisement on it, and they were blank. But you had to basically get to know your sets, like what you did. You did your research.
Yeah, and I do have to give props to SGC, because the one I did see, SGC clearly put blank back on there.
So In that case, could you send it back to PSA and ask for them to put the blank back on it?
I
Or
mean, they're not going to put something on they don't routinely put on, right? You can't make individual requests like that.
I don't
Could
know.
you?
I don't grade with PSA, so I'm just wondering if they could do something like that.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, quite honestly, I haven't sent a card to PSA since the pandemic hit.
okay,
I mean, I was hearing all these horror stories about people taking a year to get their cards back, and well, back then it was months and months and months, and I get paranoid about that. Heck, I might not even be living here by the time they send them back.
Well, you thinking about moving the museum somewhere?
Well, no, I mean, like this place for us, we moved here. I have another place that was my main house, and I work from home. But my wife moved here. We had to move, just get a little place for work, and we were just renting a place. And it was during the big rental boom, and man, our rent almost doubled. And I'm like, well, screw that! I could buy a house for a townhouse for a fraction of that or less than that. So that's what I did, and we didn't really plan on being here very long. And now she's working in Charlotte now. So aside from my daughter, we have absolutely no reason to be in Charleston. So
Now, a room like yours, man, like, is there any more room to keep adding to it? Because I know you recently bought a piece, which I'm not gonna say what it is, but I'm pretty sure you're gonna need some room for that piece.
well, quite honestly, I wouldn't display that piece. Like I don't know. I would be very particular about where I display it because I don't want it to see light. Okay. I don't want it to constantly be in light for no reason. Mm-hmm. And even though it's just a ceiling light, I still, it just freaks me out.
Wow.
I don't like to put. I have like autograph balls out and bats. Bats I don't worry about, but even autographs, I just don't want them to get any more light than they need to.
Mike is saying you should move to Dallas, Fort Worth.
Okay. Can I live at the ranch?
That's what we need. We need some space.
I'm gonna turn the ranch into a card museum.
Exactly. We should all bring our stuff there, and little area for elite hunters, and well, bigger area for the Mangini collection, and so on and so forth. Mike, I gotta head over to his house one of these days, hang out with him, maybe do a live stream.
I want to go see the beast.
Oh, you need time. If I ever go to your house, I'm gonna need time, probably like 2 or 3 days. But Mike's house, I think I did a 10th of what he had to show me, and it was a treat, but it was mind blowing. It was like, wow.
I mean, you could spend so much time. I have too much. I really need to downsize. I really do. I mean, I could be on that show Hoarders. I'm not even exaggerating.
Vince is wondering where I live. Dallas. That's where I live.
Hey, let's go to the Chantilly show. Who wants to go to the Chantilly show?
Chantilly show. I'm done with shows right now.
I heard that's a great show. I think I'm not sure if that's the one. I went to one in Northern Virginia. It was off Route 66. My brother-in-law lived right up the road. So I crashed at his place. I went up with a cousin of mine. And my cousin got this Steeler helmet. And he would go to shows wherever the Steelers were because he wanted to get every Super Bowl Steeler from the 70s on this helmet. Mm-hmm. And he only has one left, and it's Lynn Swann, the most difficult Steeler to get his autograph. And I have his autograph, but I can't make it magically appear on this helmet. So he has like every, awesome Steeler and then some from those Super Bowl years. So there were some people there. I think it was Jack Lambert at the time, and I think there were two of them. So he wanted to go, and I went with him. And I remember it was a big show. And I remember I got a 1955 Topps All-American Jim Thorpe for $50. Guy was asking like 75 or something. Like, you take 50? He's like, yeah, sure. I'd pick it up for $50. It graded a 4.5, I think, or a 4 or 4.5 when I sent it in. But it was like really nicely centered. It was a nice one.
Now that you're talking about, I guess, football, I'm curious. You dabble in everything, and I try to stay in my lane most of the time, like with baseball. But do you have a favorite vintage when it comes to hockey, football, basketball, other sports like that?
Yeah. And let me just tell you that's the wonderful part about, I want to backtrack for 1 second. That's a wonderful part about collecting is I still to this day remember where I got that Jim Thorpe and what the
Really?
guy looks like and sold it to me. And that must have been 20 years ago. But back to your question. Man, I love me some vintage boxing. I like that 51 ringside and those early boxing cards. Oh man, they're like little works of art. They're like like I feel about baseball cards. And I really I like vintage hockey and basketball. Um, so I don't know that I could pick. Vintage football. Um, some of them are just amazing, like the '48 Leafs, and but I don't know. I like them all. I like them all. I even have like the old Jesse Owens and Olympic cards and stuff like that.
I have to agree with you with boxing. One of the things that I gravitated to with boxing was the fact that you could go into the 1800s like with baseball.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
The
yes.
fact that you can go into the 1800s and pick up a John L. Sullivan and see the morphing from the bare knuckle to a Jack Johnson with the gloves, and then you start almost seeing all the champions, the lineage going down the line, era to era, and then with those, it's like you might have to go to Europe to pick up some of their tobacco cards because you just don't see anything else of a specific boxer. And when you think that, wow, I came upon some rare stuff from Europe, it's like, wow, I finally got it. Like you can't press buy fast
Yeah.
enough on some of these.
And you know what's a phenomenon with boxing that you won't find with any other sport is that if you were the champion at boxing in the early 1900s, like Jack Johnson, you were the true champion. You were the true best because it was the first sport that was integrated, and you were fighting against the best. You don't have to debate whether Babe Ruth could hit Negro League pitching. Those debates go on, and the whole first part of the century, the best players weren't playing against each other. That's not true in boxing, right?
Right. I
But
love
you're
that.
right. It has the same history as baseball. It goes back to the 1800s.
Right.
Not the same history, but a similar history.
Right. Like how deep it can go is baseball is the only one that you could say could parallel as far as like the depth of how far back you can find cards. Um, the other thing with boxing is the history is so rich, like with
Yeah.
baseball is so rich, and you could constantly come upon new information or a boxer you never heard of. Next thing you know, you research it and you're like, oh my God, he was like the champ for 3 years, or he rose through several different weight classes and dominated all those weight classes. Like, how did I not hear about this guy?
Yeah.
Just like you might look up George Sisler or someone else, just and be
Yeah.
blown away by how great that player was and never even knew he existed before you picked up the card.
Yeah. I tell you, I would recommend anybody watching this, man, go look up on YouTube a video on Sam Langford.
Mhm.
Man, what a life story.
Mhm.
And he just beat everybody. He was like a middleweight, and he insisted on fighting heavyweights, and he would beat them, or go the distance with them, give them a pounding. I mean, what a story! I mean, the end of his story, the end of his life was kind of sad, although he was a happy-go-lucky guy. Uh, but man, what a story! And he and Joe Gans are probably the two boxers in history, the two greatest boxers people never heard of.
Mhm.
Never heard of them. I guarantee you, most people on here never heard of Joe Gans, and he held the title for 6 years,
Um,
and he fought Sam Langford.
Stories in Cardboard loves vintage football, especially Bowman. I know you have several of those.
Yeah,
And
I
then
love it all. I'm like
Vince,
Dean Gerhardt.
Vince is asking if you have a 48 leaf Sugar Ray Robinson.
Yeah, I have a rum one up there, and then I have an uncut sheet with it, and Jack Johnson. I just showed it on a recent video.
Look at that. That's the one set I don't have a card in with boxing. Is the
They're so awesome.
and there's another set is the 50, the one that has it looks like a flag in the background. Um,
Oh,
it's a 51, I believe. I don't have one card
you're
of
not
that.
talking about the ringside.
It like
That
it
doesn't have a flag.
has Rocky Marciano in it.
You're talking about 1951 ringside, I believe. These.
No, 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 no. I have that one. I have the rookie.
Wait, it has Marciano.
It has Rocky. It might be a different year. You see, because I don't own it now, I can't really even tell you which set it is. I don't own a card in that set, and it sticks in my craw. It looks like it's a flag in the background. It's very plain with maybe a stripe in the background, and they're just posing. I know you probably have few in that set.
I don't know that. By the description, I can't figure out what you're talking about, and I have shot for Marciano cards because he's my man.
Right.
Are you sure it's not the ringside?
Not the
ringside. It's not the one where he's going like this.
No, I have that one.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You said you have it.
Yeah. It's just I can't. I'm gonna be drawing blanks right now. There is
okay.
Yeah, I want to pick one from that set and the leaf. And the leaf, I want to get the Sugar Ray Robinson.
Oh, you know what you're talking about? That's like a great set, isn't it? I think it's 1955.
It might be 55.
Yeah. Man, I can't place the Marciano, but I think I know what set you're talking about now.
He looks like he's just.
Most of the boxers are from the earlier days, though. It's almost like a great set, right?
It's a good set. It has a lot of stars in it.
I'm gonna have to look into that when we get.
It's very basic. I bet you once we turn off we'll remember which set it is. Yeah. Offhand. But there's two sets I need to own a card, and it's the leaf and that one set, which I cannot remember what it is right now. But I'm getting another question here. Let me see. What's this say? Where did you get your 52? Oh, from an auction house. I did not mess around. I went to an auction house and I picked that bad boy up. I wasn't going to trust eBay or something else like that when it came to a card of that magnitude. I don't remember the auction house, though. And how was your first experience with auction houses there, John?
Well, I was like a total newbie. But thank God I had you guys to walk me through the process. But I did screw up. I wanted that Japanese Jimmy Fox, and I thought I put the bid in early enough. And then 10 o'clock rolled around, and I went to look and realized my bid wasn't in, and now it wouldn't let me bid. I don't know what I don't know what it ended up going for. It might have went for way more than I would have paid anyway. But I would have at least liked to have watched it. I didn't even go back and look because I don't want to know. Because if it sold for less than my high bid, I would be so depressed. I mean, those cards, there's only like one graded of those cards. Like the Babe Ruth, one graded of it, and it's the holy grail of Japanese cards. That Babe Ruth, it ended up selling for $19,000, and I think that was probably a steal. It's a nice, beautiful card of him, and it just has Japanese lettering a little bit up top. But that's like the T206 of Japanese cards right there.
There was a Babe Ruth Japanese card I let go once, and it was very obscure, but it's considered his ugliest card he ever had.
The one that says Joker. I have that.
No,
you can't call it ugly.
There's another one. It looks like a line drawing.
Yeah.
He looks like a pig.
Oh, no. Oh, that one. Oh, that's god awful. That one's god awful. You're right. That's his ugliest card ever made.
You don't never see it come up, though. And I regret I didn't buy that card because you never see it come up. I've never seen it come up.
I don't know. I mean, I love just about all cards, but some, I'm not going to pay for. I won't pay for that Chipper Jones or that one either, but the Mariano. I don't even want it. I mean, I feel like a pedophile with that card. It's a young guy in street clothes.
It's the goat of all closers, man.
I know. I mean, I want his cards. I just don't want that one. I don't want a picture of him in high school, like his class picture. That's the dumbest card ever made, in my humble opinion.
I agree a little bit with that card. So I bought it with the autograph on it. So I wanted to have more substance than it just being a card of him in aqua teal clothing.
You know what? I just came up with a great idea. Since I
But
despise that card so much, I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna buy one. I'm gonna send it to Reindeer Studios, and I'm gonna commission him to put him in a uniform. Right on the card. Right on the card. I'm gonna have a 101 Mariano Rivera rookie card, and I'm gonna take one of the worst cards ever produced, and I'm gonna turn it into one of the best.
you heard that, Scott. You are commissioned to transform this card from an ugly card to a beautiful card.
Hey Scott, let me know if that can be done.
He's
You know
laughing.
what? Oh my God, I can't do that. It'll never get a 10.
No, he's laughing. Hey, for the right price, you can hire Scott to make you a nice piece.
Yeah, I actually want to do that.
You seen
That
the
might
one he
make that
did for
card better
George?
for me.
You seen the one he did for George, right? That Satchel Paige.
Just amazing. I showed it. I made my wife and daughter watch that video. I'm like, watch this come together. And he just has like that stick figure kind of thing. And he goes like this, and all of a sudden the face is clear as a bell. I'm like, how do people do that? How do people have that kind of talent, man? That's amazing to me.
Jim has the best line right there. Ugly card makeover. That's classic. I love it.
Oh my God, we could do a reality show on it.
It's true. That would be gorgeous to turn ugly card. What other ugly card could you put in there?
Well, how about that Japanese Ruth? Or one of those Ruths. It's like that one that was on Pawn Stars where he had a PSA 10 of it. It's a strip card, but it's just like not an attractive card. It's just him without a hat. Yeah, it's a strip card. I forget the designation, but it's not very nice.
Wow.
You know, like that W519. I have one of those. Like that looks like Babe Ruth. You know, it has the hat. It looks like him. And I have a Ty Cobb that's great, but then there's a Ty Cobb, man. It's real bad too. Some of those sets were cool, and some were, the photos are a little crude.
Right. Is there other cards that you just can't bring yourself to buy?
Because I don't like them.
Yeah, like the Mariano.
Well, there are certain cards in every set that, I might like the player, but I just don't like that particular card. And, if I was putting a set together, like I'd like to have it, but I'm not going to pay a lot. I don't want to pay maybe the asking price for that one because there's so many other ones I'd rather have. I go through that a lot. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but, I mean, if the card isn't appealing to me, then it doesn't matter if it's a 10 or a 1. Like I really don't want to pay money for it.
Right.
Or not a lot anyway. Even, if I need it for my set, I might suck it up. But
there's one card which I don't want people to think wrong of me, but there's nothing wrong with the card. 59 Topps Bob Gibson card. It's a nice looking card, Bob Gibson. It's up there as a key card, but it's just I can't get past the pink. Well,
let me tell you something. Topps, Bob Gibson, one of the toughest guys to ever play baseball, and you're gonna put him with pink. I agree with you. They didn't do Bob right. He has just come from the Harlem Globetrotters, and they put him in pink.
Well, I just want to clarify, there is nothing wrong with that card. Me personally, I've just never gravitated towards it because of the pink.
And James, I finally got it, like right as the boom was starting or right before the boom. And I was the same as you. I never wanted to pay so much money for that particular Gibson. There were so many other ones I would rather have. But it's a rookie card. So that's the one that's worth all the money. So you have to pay up for it. And it never was that great to me. But I had every rookie card from 1954 on except Pete Rose. And there you go. That's a card I won't pay up for. The floating head. So I didn't have Pete Rose, Hank Aaron, or Bob Gibson. So I decided
do you have Stargell?
Yes, I have Stargell.
So you have Stargell because he's your Pirates, but it's a
I got
float.
hitting lessons from Willie Stargell. I have a deep connection to Willie. Come on, that was my childhood idol growing up. That's a little bit of a different story there.
I'm with you with the P Rose.
And let's face it, I don't have to pay 1,400 or 2,000 or whatever it is to get the Rose. That card's just always been more expensive than all these other cards. And I'm a huge Pete Rose fan, but the whole rookie card thing, you got to pay 100 times more for a rookie card than you do for every other card. It's just ridiculous to me. And it's usually the ugliest card. Which is a nicer card, Nolan Ryan's rookie or his second year card?
His second year.
There's no comparison.
Same thing with Johnny Bench. Same thing with
same thing with everybody that isn't a single.
Right.
And I don't know, when I was growing up, we discounted those. As a kid, you didn't even necessarily want them because you're like, okay, well, this guy's on it, but who's this guy with him? Or who are these other three guys with him that you never heard of, right? So it wasn't that special.
Mike Smith.
What were we talking about before we got off on a tangent?
Cards that we don't.
Yeah, really... So I was saying I needed those three, and the Pete Rose I just won't pay the money for. So I did go out and get the Hank Aaron, and I got the Bob Gibson, and I'm like, I'm done. The boom can happen. I got all my rookie cards for that run.
So you have Bob Gibson.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Bob Gibson is one that I was like, I know it's a key card. Nolan Ryan is another one. I, for whatever reason, just don't want to buy it. And I know it's a key card, but it doesn't appeal to me. Maybe, I don't know. The look of the card just doesn't appeal to me.
Well, I could tell you this, as far as that's concerned, I like it. Actually, number one, it was an iconic card from when I grew up. As soon as he started to really get popular, regardless of price, because it was him, and because there's two good players on there. Everybody always dismisses Kuzma. Kuzma. But he was a good pitcher. I mean, when I was watching him, he was. And right. They dismiss that because most of those cards don't have two long time, starters and players.
Right. And people may think that it's because he's sharing a card that I might not care for it. It's not. I've chased the Alan Trammell card, Paul Molitor. I chased the Mike Schmidt card. I don't know. I think given what the money it commands, I don't see the rationale with owning that card for some reason. I don't know.
You didn't want the Ron Say rookie?
Well, I have the Ron Say rookie, but I have that one. But that one was like $75 for a nice looking card.
Wait a minute. I was joking around. He's on with Mike Schmidt.
I have that one.
Oh, okay.
It's the Nolan Ryan that I couldn't bring myself to. I could buy a $75 Mike Schmidt rookie, but a Nolan Ryan rookie was like $250 to $300 raw. And I just was like, I can't bring myself to buy that card. I don't know why.
That just happens with certain cards, just like me and the Pete Rose. We have this thing. I'm not going to buy you till you come down in price. I'm not paying that much for you. We have this agreement. But, like the one card that I think is the most undervalued card in the whole hobby probably is the Johnny Bench rookie. And even, the Rod Carew would be up there, the Tom Seaver would be up there, the Nolan Ryan would be up there. But you could pick up, a really nice example of Johnny Bench for under $100 for years and around $100. I think my last one I bought for $105. Now that was before the boom, but still, it should have never been that low. When you're paying over $1,000 for Nolan Ryan and you and one of the greatest catchers that ever lived, you're only paying $100 for it. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Right, and then Nolan Ryan, they started to pop up the fake ones, the reprinted ones, so whatever. So once that happened, I was like, if I didn't even care for the card, now that they're making fake ones, I don't even want to touch this card. And
there's another point with that Nolan Ryan is it wasn't exactly rare or hard to come by, whereas like the Tom Seaver and the Rod Carew, those were way harder to come by than the Nolan Ryan. I mean, the Nolan Ryans are everywhere.
Right.
I don't know if you noticed that, but it's just they weren't as common. I don't know the print numbers. I don't know how many are out there, but just growing up, I know I rarely saw a Tom Seaver or Rod Carew, and I saw Nolan Ryan. Every card shop, every flea market you went to had it.
Shout out to Lou. He just recently picked up a Rod Carew, a really nice
Yeah, yeah.
example, and got me a little jelly there with that one.
7 batting titles. Come on. How can
One
you
of
not have
the
Rod Carew?
one of the great vintage cards you could hope to own is that Rod Carew because it's short printed. You could rarely find it. And nice examples also.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've been on for about an hour and a half, and we basically shot the shit here. And I just felt like, based on some of your rants, not that they were a rant, but you were passionate about the discussion of the hobby that you
I
love.
would not call them rants.
Well, what are they?
Would you call it a rant?
I'm blowing off steam.
I was just having a discussion.
You know what grinds my
I'm
gears?
Italian. I speak with enthusiasm.
With enthusiasm and grinding them gears.
Yeah, people think like my dad. Everybody would always think he was yelling at him because of the way he talks, but he's not.
Right.
And my wife's Korean, and her family, surprisingly, was the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, are they mad at each other? Because when they would speak Korean, I didn't know what they were saying, but they always sound like they're yelling at each other. And she's like, no, that's just how they talk.
But I love the fact that you're passionate and you let it be known when something gets you worked up. Or
well, I think somebody needs to stand up for the collector. Everybody stands up for everybody but the collector. Everybody gets a pass no matter what they do. No matter what they do. If you're grading you're authenticating a box of 86 Fleer basketball cards and something slips by you once. Okay, maybe you made a mistake. Maybe you were duped. But when it starts happening more than once, now we got a pattern here. This is not a one-off any longer. And how many people have to be ripped off or open up G.I. Joe packs, in a very expensive Pokemon box or whatever? How many times does that have to happen before we do something about it as a hobby, right?
I agree, and it also discourages people from getting in or knocks the hobby back a little bit,
or makes them get out.
Right. It makes people say the hobby, you're stupid for getting into that. Look at what they're doing. And like I tell friends sometimes, I don't tell everyone, only a few people. I let them know what I get into with cards and how much I put into it. And a lot of people think I'm nuts. And I'm like, but this is what I love. I love doing this. Like I see value in what I'm spending my time doing. So I don't care what you think or what you say. But at the same time, I like what you said. I hate when I see that because it makes me look foolish for sticking up for it or backing it up with putting my money behind it. So, yeah, I see why you get pretty upset about it sometimes.
Well, we all have our opinions and this and that, but I truly am kind of worried for the hobby. I'm just worried for the hobby. Like, I just think like somebody has to stand up for us collectors. We're the ones that drive it all,
Man.
And long after, like if prices go down and people, and I'm not opposed to flipping, man. Like I told you earlier, we need everybody involved. Who are we going to buy from if people aren't flipping or there aren't dealers? We need everybody, but it has to be healthy. And,
right.
It has to be healthy.
I just did 2 trades in national.
Scammers.
I just did 2 trades that could be considered flipping because I took
5
cards.
I've done it. Hey, James, I did it too.
Right.
Because when I didn't have a lot of money, I would get stuff I didn't necessarily want, or I would buy doubles and I would sell it in order to buy new cards.
Right.
But hey, when you and I did it, we weren't selling them for $100,000, $50,000.
But I definitely
it's a whole new world.
Right. I took cards that I didn't appreciate as much as I did before, or I knew what I spent for it. Maybe I spent $300-$400 total for cards that were worth over $1,000, and now they could help me get Christy Matheson. Like, I'm gonna do that.
Well, that's what I was saying. I'm not against that at all. I'm not against guys that make a living doing that. Right. Like, there's two types of card investors that I think of. You have the card investor who is the prospector, right? Like, I'm going to buy up 20 Juan Sotos. This card's going to be the next big thing. And then you have like the guys that just see underpriced cards and pounce. You see a card that's worth 1,000 and somebody's selling it on eBay for 200 or on Facebook, or maybe not even that much of a gap, but you just try to make that gap. And the way you sell, you don't have a lot of overhead. That's fine. Like I said, I used to dabble in that to fund other cards. I used to pull these cards, and I always found it dumb. Like you'd have one card that was not numbered and another card that was identical, but they put a gold stamp to 50, right? But it's
Right.
the exact same thing other than that number. And back when they first started putting those numbers, like when it was like that number annoyed me. It takes away from the card. The one without the number looked better.
Right.
I mean, so I remember I would sell those with the number because people would pay, up for that crap. So I'd sell the one with the number and I'd keep the other one because I just like the card, and then I would take that money and go buy vintage.
Yeah. Well, it's something. It's like you said. Everyone can do with the hobby what they like because it's a this is America. That's what it's all
Absolutely.
about. It's if you can't, then why can you be happy to be an American? It's because this is what is so great about our country. If we have the liberty to do as we want with so many ways.
Yeah, I
But
mean the thing is I'm a very positive person. I believe in bringing people up, not putting them down. I don't go around making like hate videos to people or even hate comments. I never do that. But I mean, it just gets to the point that sometimes you just feel like you're getting taken advantage of from every angle. And I know I'm not alone. I know there are guys that feel this way. And it's like in business. If you got somebody complaining, you should be thankful. You should be thankful that they're complaining because it gives you a chance to keep them. Because for everyone that complains, there's 10 that walk away and don't tell you, and you don't have an opportunity to keep their business. And
mhm.
so for everybody that feels like me, I'm voicing it. But for every one of me, there's 10 that are walking away and you don't know they're walking away. They're quiet about it. So, I mean, it's just a shame. I know I said earlier about Dustin and from Dustin and Blake doing that video on all those people that haven't made a video in over a year. I mean, did they walk away from collecting?
No, probably
I mean,
not.
is it coincidental that they all quit making card videos during the boom?
Right.
I mean, they may have all walked away. We don't know.
Some people probably got burned.
But when,
Some people, yeah, some people probably wanted to open up wax and they were hoping for the next Acuna rookie card autograph parallel and
well,
I got
those kinds of channels, but not guys like you and me are just showing cards and then you just don't, they all, if we disappeared one day, it would be unusual to say the least.
I don't know if I could disappear totally. There's times life gets too busy for me that I cannot like put my attention into cards or a
Oh, yeah,
video.
yeah, yeah.
And that's the only time I take a hiatus, but it's just more because life, I've been busy, but I always come back with a live stream if I can, like right now. Seriously, it's just I still love cards. I love
Well,
collecting.
a lot of those influencers, they're entertaining, and some of them just interview people, and they mean no harm. They're not doing anything. They might go on there and tell you what the auction prices are and this and that. They don't bother me at all. I watch all that stuff, and because I'm in this hobby, I like to watch a little bit of everything, to expand my horizons, to see what's out there, to see what maybe to be careful of, and I mean, I think I'm going to do like an apology video for
For
uh,
Jeff
for sports collectors, sports investors.
Master.
What's his name?
Jeff, sports
Yeah,
card
yeah.
investor, I think.
Because and in watching his stuff, the one thing that I realized is he's making all these stupid purchases and overpaying for everything and coming on there and telling you the hottest new cards. But when I look more closely, he never once is telling you to do that. He's never once telling you to do that. He's just, he's pushing his website or whatever, like that NFT that didn't work out. And guys like him, entrepreneurs, hey, they'll fail 10 times for that one big hit. I don't fault him for that at all. He tried that NFT thing. It was hot when he tried it. The dumbest idea I ever heard in my life, but you know, there's a lot of dumb ideas out there that are making a killing
Wait,
right now.
was that the NFT about the rips or
Yeah,
something?
it was an NFT of famous breaks.
The rips, biggest
So
rip.
you watch somebody break a card. Yeah, whatever. But like Thomas Edison had like 90 failures for every one success. Like that's what entrepreneurs do. I don't fault him for that at all. I don't fault him for making that website. It's actually kind of I mean, it's not my kind of thing, but it seems maybe people are into that. But after I was watching, I like to give everybody I don't know. I like to look at some things, settle down, take a deep breath and revisit. And I realized he's not telling anybody to do anything. He's just showing what he's doing. Now, young people can be influenced by that. There's no doubt. They see this guy on there paying $10,000 for 1988 Fleer basketball, and they say, "Oh, maybe I can make money." But he also showed his failure with that.
Well,
So maybe
I think
you learned a lesson from watching the failure that, hey, I'm not paying $10,000 for 1988 basketball.
no,
You know what I'm
Rick, I
saying?
think went out and bought a box right
I,
after he saw
I,
the video.
I don't know. I just had maybe I'm misreading. I kind of lump these guys all together because it's just like they just seem to be taking more and more advantage of the hobby, influencing the hobby, and changing the hobby. And I mean, change is inevitable, but maybe some of us just aren't taking it too well.
He's one of the ones that is making me think vintage is finally getting its due, because not only is he getting into vintage, but now all his followers are going to get into vintage. So all the people he's going to drag into this avenue that they never used to look at because
Well,
he
that's
knew
what set me off is saying how rare those things were and the prices on them and stuff like that. He's way overpaying, and people could get burned if they're copying what he's doing. But I don't think he's getting into vintage. Did he actually buy anything?
a lot of his latest purchases, what Babe Ruth, the
Well,
mantles that he
no, he
showcased.
didn't. I don't know if he bought those mantles. He
He
didn't on
bought,
camera.
he bought the Ruth.
He bought the Ruth, yeah,
That was a big purchase. He wanted to buy a
yeah.
52 mantle. I think he was looking for
And
one.
and and this is what bothers me about them. About the modern hobby. And I'm sorry, it just bothers me. When you pay $100,000 for a Michael Jordan star card that back in that day, and anybody who collected at that time will know this. We considered that a joke of a card, a junk card, a fake card, homemade card. Wasn't licensed. It was like made in somebody's garage. So nobody wanted that thing back in the day because we did not ever consider it a legitimate set. Like those cards, we treated it as literally like homemade cards. And now you fast forward to this modern hobby, and that's like worth 50 grand or whatever. But he paid 100 grand for it. And right now, and you could double check my work, you can go on eBay. I posted it. And there's like 5 of them for half that or less around the same grade. You got a PSA 8. There's a 9 off center that's not really too off center. I don't know why I got the OC, but they gave it a 9 and it's selling for a half. There's a Beckett 8.5 that's selling for half. And you can pick up a 7 for like 20 grand.
Wow.
So when that's just the things, but it's his money, and in looking at it again, I'm saying it again. I'm apologizing basically. In looking at it again, he's not telling you to go out and pay 100 for it, even though you could be influenced and think that, hey, I should do this. But he doesn't come out and say you should do this, right? He's just showing himself doing it.
Right.
But it's like. And I haven't seen him show any selling of any cards.
Right.
So I don't know if he's flipping these, long-term investing, or if he's just, super rich and just going around and buying these cards just to have something to film.
I think he's flipping some. I don't know to what extent, because there was one recent video where he cracked some stuff and then had it regraded, and then he showed his gain or loss. And he gained,
Yes.
like, I think 4 grand in total. So he's basically showing what he's going to hope to flip it for and if he's going to show gains or not. So he's doing it in some respect. I don't know how much, but he
Well,
is.
you have collectors and you have investors, and again, that's part of the frustration of a lot of us collectors. Because I know if I feel it, there's other people that feel the same way. Is that the investors? See, we used to go together well, right? The investors would, they would get a hold of these old cards that we wanted, and they would sell them to us for a reasonable price. Now the investors have they've hijacked the hobby, and they're selling them to each other and raising those prices and this and that, and cracking and sending, getting those tens, and the more people care about that and pay up and pay up and pay up, I mean, it affects everything we can buy. It affects us. It affects the whole hobby.
The
And
worst,
I
the
think we
worst
need
was
more of an equilibrium where there's more of that collector and investor more equal.
the
Right
worst
now, I don't
was
feel that collectors equal. We're getting our asses handed to us every day. All we do is shell out money. I mean, you buy this, you got to buy a sleeve to put it in. And you got to buy a box for BCW to store them in. And then you got to send it to Mike Baker, and he has to tell you if it's a nice 2.5 or not. It's just like everywhere you turn, you're shelling out money. You got Tops Now, you got Project 70. I mean, we drive the hobby. We're the ones that are buying all this crap, right? And so we should have a little bit of a say in it, and we should certainly be free to speak our minds about it.
right. The worst I think I ever thought was with the fractional sharing of a card. That was mind blowing to me when I found out people were buying a percentage of a card. And I'm like, what? Like, you're just basically buying stocks of a card, but never owning it. And that was mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, that didn't really bother me. Like I find it, I see, like, if you could buy a 1/5 of a Honus Wagner, T206 Honus Wagner, and sit on it as an investment. I mean,
But every
it
card
sucks because it's
blew
out
up.
of somebody's collection. Like, it's not in the realm of a collector, but they're going to sit on it as an investment. But it didn't really like anger me or anything.
But
I don't
every
really care.
high end card suddenly started getting bought out. And you have to know that that was happening basically by those companies that were
Oh,
doing
absolutely,
it.
absolutely, and
And
that's
it was,
probably why they've come down so much. Is they're not doing that now because
well,
their Bitcoin's down, their NFTs are down. The high flying tech stocks are way down. Some of them got hit 60-80%. Even though they've rebounded now, they're still way down from where they were. And those kinds of guys, they like to buy at the top. They buy at the top and hope it goes higher. And when there's a turnaround like that, they just get their asses handed to them. Like
well, that
when
was
they tanked, that's when I buy them.
that was the
I
to me that was to me the one that got to me. I was like, wow, they're actually doing fractional sharing of cards that I wish I could own. And but because I can't own it, like I gotta buy a percentage of that. And then you couldn't find them. They were all snatched up all of a sudden, like from
Well, it's the investor mentality, right? That's when a card becomes a currency rather than a card. Really. I mean, but if you could buy a piece of a Picasso and you believed it was going to be worth $1 million more in 5 years, I really don't see a problem with it. It's not something I would participate in,
right.
but it doesn't really bother me.
Scott says, I'd rather buy a mutual fund as an investment. Cards are supposed to be fun. I agree with that 100%. I love handling a card, especially a raw card where you could touch it and feel it. And there's that connection that you cannot duplicate that. Even with a slab, slabs are nice. The one thing about a slab I love is that it's protected and you know what it's worth. But I wish I could feel it sometimes and touch it, but then again,
Yeah, well, that's another part of another big problem I have with box prices, pack prices, and everybody driving these things up, no matter how common it is, or like we were talking earlier about the cards that you couldn't give away, and mass produced, but now you slap a label on it, it go for a lot of money. Is that kids? How do kids afford these things today? I mean,
right.
we used to scrounge around for some change, and enough to go to the flea market and buy yourself, cards for a few bucks. And I mean, it might seem like a lot of money at the time, but how does a kid, unless your parents are giving you a lot of cash, your average Joe kid who doesn't come from a rich family, how does he buying cards or anything? So, that's the part that's kind of sad for me. And because it's all about the money and you're pricing a lot of the kids out.
Especially lately, where I would go to Walmart and some of these hanger boxes like were almost a quarter to half more than what they used to go for, and I'm like, no, absolutely not, I'm not buying this anymore. Like, yes, I would like to try for an SP of J Rod, but I'm not going to take that chance for this price anymore. It's because 9 times out of 10 I'm not going to end up with anything in that pack, so why take the chance?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time you get nothing, and that's pretty much what they're relegated to if they have that. Because I mean, boxes is just they keep getting higher and higher and out of reach. I mean, I get these offers, from Tops. I'm a Montgomery Club member, and they'll be like exclusive Montgomery Club box. So I'm like, oh yes, and I pull it up, and it's like 1,200 a box, and I'm like, what? Or 300 and some, 500. Like, no, no thanks, no
That's
thanks. And then
crazy.
and then if you get junk, I mean, it's like gambling, opening packs. That's what it's become.
I
And you
guess.
have guys go to card shops or whatever. They'll be like, they'll spend $1,000 on packs, and they'll stand there and they throw them away, or they throw, here, you can have these, and they give them to those card shops because they're just looking for hits.
And I
That's
saw
what.
people ripping stuff from the National and pulling out fire, but that was like free giveaways. It's like you're
Yeah.
getting something for free and they're still worth a lot of money because it's like an autograph, or that was pretty cool. But to take a chance at Walmart and spend $100, $200 in retail, like
Hey,
I'm
how many of us, we have all been there where you're like in the mood, open some cards, maybe the game's on, and maybe you want to open up some cards while you're watching the game or before the game on a Sunday morning, and you go out and you hit the jackpot, right? You hit the pay dirt at Walmart or Target, has a whole bunch of cool stuff, right? So you grab it up and you come home and you get nothing. And then you're like, I just spent all that money on, and now I got to store these things. Like, what am I going to do with this crap?
I have this is series two, a stack. I still haven't put it away. And I didn't hit anything in that stack of cards.
Yeah.
Nothing. But I told myself I'll buy two hangers, $30, and that's it. That is it. I'm not buying the whole thing, the whole row. Is 2 packs. That's it. Scratch my itch. Enjoyed opening stuff up. And if I hit something, it's something, but I know I'm not. And that's it. That's
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah. And like in the old, with the older vintage cars, like if you want to, like Hank Aaron had a card every year in the 60s, and he had one card, or, maybe an all-star or something like that. But now, oh my God, like if you get a second year card of somebody or a third year card, nobody wants it. You can't give it away.
Right.
Nobody wants it. It's not worth anything, nothing. Because there
Lou,
are 5 million different cards of every modern player.
Louis
And,
made
and,
fun of us. I could have swore my guy said goodnight like 30 minutes ago.
yeah, we need to go. We're boring everybody.
I'm surprised we were able to keep this going for almost 2 hours, just me and you.
Hey, let me show you this amazing pickup. Maybe nobody saw. This is such an amazing piece, man. You gotta love vintage. This is Connie Mack and Lefty Grove on an old what is
Sanella?
this? A National Chickle. It's a R312,
Oh, okay.
or I don't know. Can you see that? It's
Yeah.
hard when you go live and there's two
No,
screens.
it's
But you
beautiful.
got
You
Connie
know what?
Mack here and Lefty Grove sitting behind him in the background, and the colors and everything are just amazing on this.
Hold on. Hold on. I'm going to try to put you. Wait. Hold on. Man, I had you.
That's if you can get it.
I'm trying
You
to.
you had you up there, so do the opposite of what you just did.
There we go.
There you go.
Look at that beauty.
They don't still make them like this anymore.
Now, Connie Mack is famous for the $100,000 infield, right?
Yep,
People,
his $100,000 infield. Can you name them?
uh, Home Run Baker, Eddie Collins.
Wait. You got to name the position.
Home run Baker, third base.
All right.
Eddie Collins, second base. Shortstop. I can't think of the shortstop. Or
Rick Barry. I almost said Rick Barry. Jack Barry.
Jack Barry. And at
First base. Cool nickname.
Nope, can't think of first.
Stuffy McGinnis.
Stuffy McGinnis. Hey,
He's
I got
a good player too.
I got a good player. Sorry.
Yeah. Hey, let me just finish with a trivia question. See how many people know this one. What farm team produced the most championship and World Series players in the history of baseball? What farm team produced the most championship and World Series players in history? Does anybody know? Anybody guessing?
I'm assuming it's like a trick question. They didn't end up finishing with that team.
It's the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Your team.
Hashtag sell the Pirates already. It's been long enough. It's been enough decades. Come on.
They produced a Parker.
If you want to have a farm team, go down to the Carolinas and buy a farm team. Sell the team to somebody that cares.
Well, on that note, I got to thank you, John, for joining me for this little rant session about our vintage cards that we love. And I'm glad you guys.
Thanks, James.
I want to thank everyone who is still here. Bink, Scott, I see. Dylan, who's one of my favorite channels because
hey, Dylan.
Passion. Scott, Reindeer Studios. So many great people. Don, Lou.
Dylan might be the only person that's more passionate about cards than me.
Dylan with the double shocker. Alan's cards, one of my favorite. I saw your 30 for 30, Alan. Great video, great bunch of cards. I loved it. I just never got to comment because I was driving.
Yeah, you talked about that at the beginning of the video if he wasn't on it yet.
Oh, I love that video, man. It made me want to pull out 30 of my favorite ones and show them. That's how much I love that one. So I see so many people. Chosen Rasta, Pick a James, James Gillum. Thank you all for joining us. This was fun. Stories in Cardboard. Mike Hitman 23.
Mike.
Adam's Card Closet.
Adam.
Right. Thank you for joining us. And we'll do it again. Hopefully we'll have more people on. Maybe next time, if we have more people, I'll do another Would You Rather, because I know John loves that. Racking his brains out with who he's going to choose. But
that's so hard.
It's not hard.
That was tough.
It's like bar fodder, man.
That's a tough game.
It's fun, man. But anyway, I'm gonna wish you all happy hunting when it comes to cards. I want everyone to stay safe, be blessed, and I will see you on the next one. Bye. All right, we're ending.